Hello, hello, hello. It is amazing to be here. Lillian Reiki, parenting strategist from the Parent Support Network. And today I have an amazing friend all the way from the US, from Portland in the US, Bridget Saladino, who is one of my beautiful Nurtured Heart Approach friends and colleagues over there in the States. So Bridget is such an amazing lady. I've been getting to know her through our Nurtured Heart groups, and her story is incredible. I actually contacted Bridget because I wanted Bridget to share with us all her amazing journey with Nurtured Heart Approach. So I'll let her share it in a little bit more detail in a moment, but I'm just going to read out a little bit about Bridget. So she's a mum of 2 teen daughters. She lives with her partner in Portland in the US. She has a master's in counselling, a doctoral in International Feminist Studies. It's interesting. And has been an entrepreneur her whole life. I can relate to that one, me too. Yay. She's owned marketing companies, construction companies, survived trauma, found the love of her life. I can relate to a lot of that. And she's recently returned from a year of travel around the world with her family. During her travels, a crisis with one of her daughters emerged, which set Bridget on an absolute quest to relearn how to be the best parent possible. And isn't that something we all want to do? So after a year of searching, she finally stumbled upon Nurtured Heart Approach, and it has absolutely transformed her relationship with her daughter. And she even goes on to say overnight. She has wholly embraced Nurtured Heart Approach and is now an advanced trainer. So what that actually means is in the time that I've known Bridget, she wasn't a trainer initially. She was just learning the Nurtured Heart Approach. She became a certified trainer, and then within another couple of months became an advanced trainer, which is a huge accomplishment and means that she has a huge passion for Nurtured Heart Approach. She's been making some positive waves over there. She started some Nurtured Heart Approach strength training classes, of which I'm going to be working in with her as well. And her Facebook, the Nurtured Heart Facebook page, you can get some more details, or you've got Bridget's email in the description there as well. So where do we start, Bridget? So initially, one of the things that really I don't know, it really made me feel into my heart, and it really made me, think about so many things about what it means to be a parent. I remembered you saying on one of your posts that your then, I think she was 16, is that right, year-old daughter, had not hugged you for about 3 years. And I'm like, wow, had not hugged her. And I can remember some of the conversations that you were having in the group about how tough things were with you and your daughter. There seemed to be, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of disconnect. There seemed to be challenges within your relationship, even though you had all the love in your heart to have that beautiful relationship with your daughter. And then it almost seems like within, as you say, overnight, you're starting to share with the group, oh my gosh, this is happening and that's happening. And we're now connecting. And I had my first hug. And not only is my daughter talking to me, but she's talking to me in a beautiful and respectful way. And I'm like, wow, this is a really fast transformation, because for some people, the transformation takes quite a while, but you've really taken it on. You've really embraced it within your home and your parenting and your relationshiping. And it appears you've really got great results. So tell us a bit about, as much as you'd like to share, of course, what were things like within your home, your family, and with your daughter prior? How did you come across Nurtured Heart Approach? And then how has it impacted you? So that's like a 3-part question there.
And we'll do this in the next few minutes. Yes, yeah. I'm sure. Well, Lillian, thank you. Thank you so much. I genuinely feel surprised and honored for you to invite me here. I know how much work you do in the world and your community. In fact, when we first met virtually through the Facebook community, I will admit to being a little starstruck because before the book arrived, so I heard about Nurtured Heart Approach from another therapist, and I went Googling and I ordered the book and found a bunch of videos. And one of your masterclass videos was one of my very first sort of entrees into this beautiful world.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And your husband, I think his name is Andrew, if I remember right. But anyway, your husband
Yes.
had a little part in there.
Mm-hmm.
And my partner also works in construction, and I think your husband is an electrician. And I recorded that little bit of your husband and sent it to my partner, and he lit up about it, and he got on board with NHA very, very quickly, which helped a lot. So thank you.
Oh, fantastic. That's
my long way of saying thank you, and it's fun to meet, a celebrity. It's been a long journey. All parenting is challenging and a long journey at times. I have 2 daughters, and they're very different. And I used to believe that I parented them the exact same way. And why did they turn out so different when I was the same parent all along? And for much of their life, I was a single mom. And so that even more strongly reinforced my belief that it was just me. I parented them the same way. And why are they so different? And I joke that my older daughter makes me look like the world's best parent. And she looks like the world's best kid. She's just an easy kid. She's delightful. My younger daughter is fire. She is passion. She is, what I love most about myself. And, I found it challenging to parent her. And, through my own efforts, I was doubling down and doubling down again. And, her intensity needs to be harnessed, and it needs to be redirected. And her intensity is too much. And so over the years, our relationship just became almost purely negative. Not anything horrible, but there was no love lost, right? It was just correction, redirection, correction.
What we call a nurtured heart upside down.
Very upside down. All of my energy was going towards what the problem was.
Yeah.
And then, she turned 13. She got a cell phone, and then I blamed that. I'm like, oh, the challenges we're having are because of the cell phone or because of hormones or whatnot. And so this disconnect and this negative energy and these challenges kept building on themselves. Nothing was getting better. I had all kinds of advice to be stricter. And I tried that. It made logical sense. She just needs consequences. She just needs to understand what's acceptable and what isn't. And everything got worse. So then I spent a couple of years trying to get the right diagnosis.
Yeah.
Just sure that if I knew what was wrong, I would know how to address it. So somewhere in there, we took this family trip. We actually moved overseas for a year. And while the whole family was excited on the front end initially, it proved really difficult for my younger daughter to be away from her network, her close friends. And so she started spiraling. And so then I started spiraling with her. And, World War III happened in Italy, if you hadn't heard. And in my crisis, I went digging for resources, and I found every parenting book, therapeutic parenting, trauma-informed parenting, all the great new books, written by Oprah, by, et cetera, et cetera. I read and read and read and read and read, and I got audiobooks and I would listen to them on double time speed. So all these experts were chipmunks in my ear, just trying to get this, expertise and knowledge. And I even got this encyclopedia,
Oh, wow.
the A to Z of, therapeutic parenting, and I was so excited about this encyclopedia, and I downloaded the app, and whatever's going on with your kid from A to Z, open the app, open the book. And the more that I looked at the problem, the bigger the problem got.
Yeah.
And finally, we came home, the crisis continued to escalate. I mean, I could go on and on about the crisis. It was terrifying. We had police at our house, ambulance, we had ER visits, we had, without talking to my daughter ahead of time, I want to respect her story and her privacy. So I'm just not going to go too much further. But from a parent's perspective, I was terrified. I was livid. And I felt like I couldn't parent her anymore. I wasn't the right parent for this kid. And
that's hard.
It's so hard. I don't think I've ever felt, I guess worse really about myself or the world and life.
And what was happening with your older daughter while this was all going on? Everything was okay with her?
Everything was okay with her. She was also experiencing, she was living in the soup of the crisis and the rage and the yelling. And
because that's one thing I've identified, Bridget, is that sometimes, because we've got a similar story, my eldest son is the quiet, compliant, cooperative, triple degree at uni, always doing the right thing kid. And the younger one was the one who revolted, and I've written 6 books about. But interestingly, in our personal journey, my eldest son, as a teenager, was so stressed because he's nearly 8 years older than his younger brother. So we had this quiet kind of home before he came along. The younger brother came along. So my son was so distressed, he attempted to take his life at age 13. So sometimes, and the reason I interjected there was sometimes we are focusing so much on the challenging child and to try and get things right with them, that the other kid is not getting what we in Nurtured Heart approach know as beautiful, heartfelt recognition and acknowledgement. They might be getting a bit of junk food praise here and there. So I just thought I'd interject with that, because sometimes as parents of a challenging or more intense child, we put so much energy into that child that the child who's not kind of pulling on our, coattails to say, I'm here, they don't always get what we need to give them as well. So anyway, that was a little bit of an interjection there, but please do continue on with your story.
That's a great and very important reminder. I think, in our case, my older daughter had just graduated high school and was heading off to college. Okay. And so when things got kind of the worst of the worst in our house, she missed that.
Which is probably good.
Yeah, it was good for her, and she also, she certainly heard stories from me because she's very connected. So, I was just perusing Facebook one day, and after I thought I had everything figured out, because I'd read all these books and, we'd received a half a dozen diagnoses for my daughter. And, I was like, okay, here we go. We take this pill, take that pill, I was on a therapy page on Facebook, and I just, saw a therapist posting, anybody have advice on a teenager with ADHD who's in crisis? And my ears and eyes perked up. And so I went to read what all these therapists had to say, lots and lots of great advice. And then somebody said, look into the Nurtured Heart approach. And I'd never heard of it. And so I Googled, and the rest is history. And I found you, like I mentioned, and I devoured it. It resonated in my bones.
You and me are so alike with that. When I found out, I spent like 5 hours nonstop researching, watching videos, reading. And because we were in Australia, there was nothing here yet. So I reached out to America and found out that somebody was coming to start this in Australia. And I'm thinking to myself, they could be in any other state, they could be anywhere. And it was a psychologist, Bart Trainer. You may have heard of him. He's amazing. He lived in the same town I did.
No.
So I became a Nurtured Heart groupie with him until the following year when Howard Glasser came out to Australia. So it's similar for both of us. It so resonated for me when I'd already been coaching for, 17 or 18 years before I learned about Nurtured Heart approach. So, but it so resonated with kind of what I had learned from our parenting coach, etc. So like you, as soon as I found out about Nurtured Heart approach and started, and I had never heard about it prior to this, I had a conversation with a lady who just said she heard about it. And I became so passionate about it then, and then I did my training, etc. And the rest is history. Over the last 7 or 8 years, I've just immersed myself in it. So, but you've just done it all so quickly. Like this is it. I found the thing. So tell us, Bridget. So you're in this crisis. Your daughter was going through a whole bunch of stuff. It was tough for you as a mum, relating to your daughter, and I imagine it was really tough for her as well, right? Because I'm sure she wanted to connect. I'm sure she wanted to be happy and connected. So once you found out about Nurtured Heart approach, and I know you started getting some results before you even did the certified training, what were, like, if somebody's listening in today and they really don't know anything about Nurtured Heart approach, what were some of the things that you learned early on and that you practiced and that gave you those, what you said, overnight results?
It took me a long time to understand stand 3, which is clarity. But instantly I understood the idea of energy and, relationship through, is energy. And if you give your energy to negativity, it grows, it builds. There's this old Cherokee story of, the 2 wolves. And if your listeners aren't familiar, Google the 2 wolves, and it's beautiful. We each have, the story is we each have, a violent wolf inside of us, and we have a peaceful, nurturing wolf inside of us. And, the grandson asked the grandfather, well, which wolf wins? And the grandfather replies, whichever wolf you feed. And so this idea of, what am I feeding? What am I giving my energy to? And if I just turn that off, what a relief. It was exhausting. People talk about not having enough time. They don't have enough time to try a new approach, or they don't have enough time to, spend time relationally or joyously with their kid because they're too busy. I was so busy. I was the busiest person I'd ever met. And yet I made time for this crisis with my kid. So, that stand 1 is not giving energy to negativity. That just kind of made logical sense. And I was like, okay, I got it. And then stand 2 of absolutely giving energy to the greatness that I see, appreciating and recognizing the greatness that I see in other people. And then down the road, also to myself. But, it took my brain a minute, because I'd been in negativity land for so many years. I hadn't, it was hard to find tender feelings.
Yeah.
It was fight or flight for both of us for years. But I stopped and I said, okay, Howard, what's the greatness in this crisis, right?
Mhm.
Oh, wow, she knows how to stand up for herself.
Mhm.
She knows how to say no to authority. She's got a voice. I didn't feel like I had a voice as a young woman. She knows what her truth is and she's willing to fight for it. And the list goes on and on and on. And it was hard work at first, pushing through the snow or the porridge, but all of a sudden, as I practiced that exercise of just what is the greatness behind this? Because I don't see any greatness. I'm not waiting to catch her being good, right? She was not being good in my presence for quite a while. But when I made that shift, and the shift happened for me on a Tuesday afternoon at the end of August of
Wow.
2022, I was reading the book and I had taken her to a residential hospital setting
Mhm.
that Tuesday morning. And I had expected to drop her off and I had expected that she was going to stay there for a few months. So
Mhm.
she was hours away from being hospitalized.
Mhm.
And I'd gotten just far enough in the book, that I had a little bit of a clue about it. And I tried to make this shift. And so we left the hospital. They said, we have to check your insurance. So we left and came home. I was like, you can't send her home with me. Like, it took everything to get her here. And she's, gonna blow up in the car. And thankfully she didn't. And so we left. And that afternoon, I started the Nurtured Heart approach.
Wow.
And,
Mm.
initially it was really robotic and weird and rough for both of us. But the next morning, I woke up in legitimately a different house. My
Wow.
heart had changed, my focus and attention had changed, and she responded. You know, it and it, it hasn't been perfect, and I still have my worries, fears, and doubts,
Mhm.
and big hopes and expectations, but I let go of those because, it's her life, and what I want from her is inner wealth, inner strength,
Mhm.
confidence in herself, peace of mind, mental health. She
Mhm.
has those things now.
So
And
she was waiting for you, her mum, her favorite toy, the person who has unconditional love for her. She was waiting for you to see her, and when you saw her, she
yeah,
saw you and recognized that. Can you think roughly, what would have been one of the things you might have said to her on that Tuesday afternoon in August in 2021? Two, even
mm,
just paraphrase, just to,
yeah, I think the very first thing that I did was I stopped engaging with negativity. That was probably what happened mostly on that Tuesday morning.
perfect.
Or
Mhm.
Tuesday afternoon. I didn't fully have the words.
Mhm.
Uh, I actually did a couple quick coaching calls with
Mhm.
some advanced trainers.
Mhm.
I'd gone onto the Facebook page and posted, help, I'm in crisis. I've just discovered this.
Mhm.
Help me solve all my problems,
Mhm.
And a couple wonderful trainers jumped on and said, hey, let's talk for, a 20-minute consult or
Mhm.
whatever. And I got some good tips. And one of them said, tell her thank you for getting in the car.
That's right.
Right. And I was like, oh, okay.
Mm.
And so she gets in the car and I said, thank you so much for getting in the car. I know how hard this morning was for you.
Mhm.
And that was it, no reply.
Mhm.
But the combination of no more energy to negativity and just a shred of
Wow.
recognition, seeing her,
Mm.
and the next morning, I knocked on her door to wake her up, which was normally like total PTSD for both of us.
Mm.
Um, she said, I knocked on her door, and I really attribute this to just the change in my heart. She answered, she woke up and she said, who's that? Who's at my door? She didn't recognize my voice,
Wow.
and I wasn't like faking anything or, pretending to be someone else. I just had a lightness of spirit. I had a love, like feelings of
Yeah.
love and appreciation and recognition for her that I hadn't in a long time.
She was
And
connecting in with who you were in that moment. And I can so relate, so relate. Our stories are so similar, because I know that when we were at our crisis point and, we had our son in a drunken stupor that he didn't sober up from for 2 days, and he was expecting us to go back into that upside down, giving all the energy to the negative, and we didn't. And he's like, what's going on here, type of thing. Where's my punishment? I'm going to be grounded forever. I'm going to be drilled. What did I take? Why did I do it? How could you do that? And it was so hard not to, because even though I'm a really positive person, when it came to parenting my son, who was extremely intense and challenging back when he was 15, it was just so instinctual for me to yell and say, why, how could you, it was all about me, and not even thinking about his feelings, etc. So when you're right, I think that's the key. When my son also realized that, me particularly, I wasn't giving him all that negative energy, he took a breath and he took a step back and went, okay, I'm going to mirror this kind of feeling or this connection that I'm having. And that was the absolute start of our healing journey, for sure. And it was hard not to energize that negativity. It really was for me, because I did it so naturally. My husband, Andrew, as you heard on the masterclass, he sort of fell into it with a lot more ease. And he and my son have now worked together for 12 years. They're now in their 13th year of working together. And I can honestly, from the heart, say they have never raised a voice to one another. They are so respectful of each other. And prior to that, they were clashing big time, because my husband was my biggest supporter and fan, but he wasn't his son's biggest supporter and fan. So he was protecting me from, I guess, the abuse that my son was giving me, being his favorite toy, as you were to your daughter. And when we're their favorite toys, we tend to cop it the most. So it is very transformational. And I love how you said overnight, because it doesn't mean that things are perfect, right? It just means that the shift and the change. So let me go back to your story. Did your daughter end up going to that facility still?
no. So
wow. Continue, please. We're going to outdo our 20 minutes, but that's okay. This is awesome.
Well, you just, give me a
No,
timeout.
it's all good. We'll just take as long as we need.
So when I think it was the next afternoon or that night, I don't remember which, they called and said, well, long story short, the insurance coverage wasn't what we had thought it would be. And, they were like, you can still bring her, but it's not going to be what we originally thought. And I said, okay, let me see if I can find another option, or let me think about this and get back to you. And, the next morning I'd had that change, and I felt such a shift in me that I was really excited. I mean, her not recognizing my voice was, the heavens open, the light shines down. I was just like, wow. And so, I guess for the next day or two, I think I did make a few calls and see if there was, because I was worried. I'd had a few hours of relief is all. And nothing was really panning out. There's a mental health crisis around the world, I think, from the pandemic, and months long wait lists everywhere. And a couple of days into it, my partner and I looked at each other and just said, this seems to be working, and we don't want to mess with what's working. I had all these requirements that she, take the medicine, go to therapy, multiple therapists, every single one of them, once a week, family therapy, journaling, all of these sort of requirements that I thought were going to help. And little by little, I never really said you don't need to do that anymore. I just kind of backed away from that negativity. A thought that just popped into my head that I think is pretty important. When I was reading the book, and I think I got this out of the Transforming the Intense Child workbook, or one of those original books by Howard. He makes a comment where he says, the more intense the child, the more intense the intervention needs to be. And in that moment, when I read that, I thought, okay, I have the most intense child in the world. I have, the greatest crisis and problem. I'm just going to have to, 110% this. And I think that, it's the nurtured heart approach that works. But I know a lot of people who dabble with NHA and they're like, oh yeah, I remembered this week to use NHA, and I'm sure that helps, and I'm sure it helps a lot in the moment. But I quickly went from doing NHA to being NHA.
I love that. I say that.
Yeah.
I say nurtured heart approach is really who we become, and it's how we connect in relationship with people, not only our kids. We learn to, it's like I say to my participants, it's like learning a new language. So just imagine you're coming to me to learn German. It's going to take a long time to learn the language, starting with a few words that turn into a few sentences that turn into a small paragraph. So for you to be able to go over to Germany and converse with the native Germans over there in German, you're really going to have to, take this on and practice it and tweak it and practice it and get the language right and see what works for you. You can't just one day go, oh yeah, I'm going to try stand 1 or stand 2 or stand 3. It doesn't work that way. It's like a dance. I say it's like a dance that we learn. And we learn the steps separately to the dance, but then we put the dance together, and then the dance becomes fluid once we know the steps. Because if you've ever seen somebody trying to teach a dance, they're going to do this step, they do that now, introduce this step and that step, and then eventually the person can do the dance. So it's a bit like that, I feel, with Nurtured Heart. We kind of learn the steps a little bit separately, and then they all come together. And then once we're fluent with the dance, we can just dance it. And, we could dance the step 2, or we could dance the step 1, or we could dance the step 3, but it's just all a dance. It's not like do I need to be in stand 1 or stand 3 or stand 2? It just becomes a natural thing. Okay, I need to reset. Okay, I need some clarity. Okay, I need to not give that energy. Okay, this is where I really need to come in with juicy recognition. But you're not thinking it mechanically like that. It just flows and happens. So I think sometimes people, in my experience of teaching it for 8 years or so, people sometimes don't stick with it long enough to get fluent. And then they go, I can't speak German, and they give up. So that's a really good tip, that, just to really stick with it. Yeah, and take it on. Yeah.
I love those analogies. And the language analogy, I think, is, well, they're both brilliant and very apropos. But I love the language analogy of, working at it, learning it, going to Germany. You've got some phrases, you're practicing it, but if you don't stick with it. So that's good. Just a couple of days ago, I used the dancing analogy, and I made a joke, and I said, I am quick stepping my way through the 3 stands here as fast as I can.
That's it.
To get not out of, but to,
and sometimes it's a quick step, and sometimes it's a very slow waltz, like it just,
right?
It's just sometimes the dance can be different, and sometimes, we need to be. Let me ask you this question, and we better wrap it up shortly, but let me ask you this question. How did you use Nurtured Heart approach on yourself? So let's take your daughter even out of the scenario for now. So you were like, probably I was, like, initially it's like, it's the kid. We've got to fix the kid. We've got to work on the kid's challenges, the kid's problems, the kid's intensity. But I know that our parenting coach that we had when our son was 15 said, if you've got a revolting child in your home, look in the mirror. Like, it's about us. It's about the parent and the way that we connect and communicate. I used to say the same thing to you. I've got 2 sons. I'm the same parent, yet this son's this way and this son's that way, but I did not parent them the same. I was not the same parent to both of them. So, and I don't think we ever are the same parent to different kids. So how did you use Nurtured Heart on yourself to change Bridget or to help Bridget?
Oh, that's such a great question. I think it happened for me in a few ways. I mentioned really voraciously trying to get this data inside my head. And stand 3, clarity and consistency, and the reset that lives in stand 3. The reset is hard at first. It's white knuckling it. I mean, my dad used to work with addicts and alcoholics, and he would refer to people as dry drunks who are just white knuckling their way through life. They're not going to have another drink, but they haven't actually, they're not really not that alcoholic anymore. And so initially that reset is like, I'm just not going to say anything. And, I would sort of storm out of the room because that was the only thing I could do to not yell. And I was committed to not energizing negativity. And it didn't take long for me to realize that I was still energizing negativity in here. And so
that's an important thing to share with parents. And I think one of the things that I've come to realize through feedback from the people who have done the course is that when I ask for feedback, more often they talk about the change in them, even more so than the change in their relationship, even though that's been positive, but the change in the person, in themselves, and how they feel about them, and not only how they interact with their kids, but their relationship with their partners, if they're in a partnership, with like even just about how they feel about themselves. That's the beauty of this approach. It's so far reaching. It's so, oh my gosh, I know we could talk for hours and hours about this, the ripple effect of implementing this into your life. So if you have a challenging child in your life at the moment, say, thank you, universe, for bringing me this challenging child. Because if you open your heart up to the Nurtured Heart approach, then you are going to be so grateful for that challenging child. Because I know just because my first son was not intense and challenging didn't mean I was a good parent with him, didn't mean I was the best parent, didn't mean that I was nurturing him, which I obviously wasn't, because he had challenges as well. And now all of our interconnected relationships are so beautiful. Like we have 5 adults in this home. We all live together, including my younger son's partner and the menagerie of animals that they have. We all live together, and we get on so well together. We sit down and have meals every night, and we talk, and we share each other's, wins, or share each other's challenges, or, like 5 adults, ranging from the youngest being nearly 30 right through into their 60s, just sitting down, conversing and having great conversations every night. And often we're at the dinner table still an hour after we've all finished eating, because that happened last night. We were chatting about stuff, and then, the time just flies by, and that happens all the time, and I'm so grateful that this information came my way, even though transparently we didn't know the Nurtured Heart approach initially when my son was younger, but we were very fortunate that we found a parenting coach that had aligned thinking. But when I found the Nurtured Heart approach, oh my gosh, it put everything into perspective and into more order for me. So as a parenting coach, it made it easier for me to help other parents with the Nurtured Heart approach, because it was, I guess, a little more systematic with learning the 3 stands. So I guess it's just a bit like if you're teaching dance, and if you just go, here's the dance, try and copy me, it's harder than, okay, learn this step and then learn that step and then learn that step and then put it together. So I'm very, very grateful that I found the Nurtured Heart approach. And my mission and passion, which I know is yours as well, is just to get this out far and wide, to impact as many, parents and educators and caregivers of children actually anybody who relationships with anybody. So unless
Yep.
you're a hermit living in a cave up wherever, you can benefit from the nurtured heart approach. So in closing, Bridget, so firstly, thank you so much for sharing your story. I know we could talk more, but in closing, if somebody listening in is in a situation where they might know about the nurtured heart approach, they might not, but they're in some form of challenge or crisis, or maybe things are okay, but they'd like them to be better. Or maybe they're like you were with your daughter and we were with my son. They're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing. What would be some advice you would give them in relation, I guess, to nurtured heart approach? What would be a tip or two that you would give them to take them from, where they're feeling now, because I know so many people are feeling despair and stress and like within themselves. I'm not sure if I'm getting my point across, but what advice would you give somebody who has that feeling of maybe hopelessness at the moment or wanting things to be better?
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind is, excuse me, to not blame yourself.
Perfect.
I spent months blaming myself and crying myself to sleep and feeling so depressed. Some days I couldn't get out of bed and I was a total failure. And
Beautiful.
it isn't, I had the best intentions and I had good parents and I had all the training and all the education up here. And there was just an energetic shift that needed to happen. Like the polarization, that's not the right word, but when you turn a magnet upside down,
yeah,
it sends the energy. It's the same magnet. It just sends the energy in a different direction. So that would be the first thing, is just don't blame yourself. And, as quickly as you can, let go of negativity. It doesn't, don't water the weeds, as we say, right? You don't want to feed that wolf. And then greatness is everywhere. It's shocking. It's incredible. I'm in a lawsuit with somebody right now, and I had to write a really hard email a couple of days ago, and I stopped and I asked myself, what is the greatness in this person that I hate right now? And I spoke a little bit to their greatness, and it makes me who I want to be.
Yeah.
And that's the question.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
Myself every day is, who do I want to be?
That's beautiful. Thank you. I could keep talking with you for so much longer, but we better leave it there. So if you're listening in, thank you so much for listening in. If you'd like to know more about Bridget's Nurtured Heart strength training classes, just touch base with myself or with Bridget. Her email is in the description there. Also, I have a masterclass coming up in a couple of weeks on February 15th, which is a free masterclass that anybody is welcome to join, both here in Australia and in the States. If the time doesn't align, people can still register and then they'll just get the recording. So I'm so pleased that you found my masterclass with my husband. Was that the Superhero Dads one?
No, it was before that one.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It was back. It would have been back in August, I think. No. August or early September, somewhere around there. Oh, perfect. And I think it was an older one that was recorded maybe, but okay, it was a game changer. So attend a free masterclass.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So helpful. I love that you offer that. It's a wonderful gift, Lillian. Yeah. Thank you.
It's a good way of, just getting people to see what we do and tell our story, because so many people like your story and my story. I'm sure if we lined up 1,000 parents randomly from the street, probably 900 of them could relate to our story in some way. Absolutely. So thank you, Bridget. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. I know you've had a really busy day, so I appreciate your time and your, I guess, vulnerability for sharing your story, because sometimes it's hard, isn't it? Sometimes it's hard to share that things were as tough as they were. I know it was for me when I started sharing, and there's a lot of vulnerability around sharing that. So thank you so much for opening up your heart and sharing that story with us. And I look forward to let's do this again sometime. Let's continue the conversation. So yeah, absolutely. So thank you everybody for tuning in. I appreciate that we took a fair bit longer than we first anticipated, but I kind of figured we might have. I knew that we were going to chat on for a while. Okay, thanks heaps and bye for now.